they were over the age of 65, and some ex-presidents were not female. That phrase of some ex-presidents were not female yields more information, even though it doesn't directly tell us that it does. So if some of them were not female, what we can infer is that some of them were female. And as a result of that, it means that some of the ex-presidents were female. We know that they would have been over 65 because all of the ex-presidents there were over 65. And that's the reason why this second answer is correct here. Again, it's a very challenging way of working through the information. And you would have seen that the way that the information was presented to us in this question was very different to the first question that we did. And again, that highlights the difficulties and the challenges of decision making in terms of making you use these logical processes in very different ways and not giving you any respite in terms of transitioning from one method of giving you information to another. So decision making can be quite punishing in that regard. But to the 26 of you who did give that second option, you are absolutely correct in saying that that's the correct answer. We mentioned that they would potentially use some form of mathematics in these questions. And Venn diagrams is one of the most common types of questions that you can get in decision making. It typically makes up around 20% of the whole section itself. So it's really important to be aware of Venn diagrams and be aware of how to read them effectively. There are lots of different ways in which they can give you information in Venn diagrams and different ways in which they can ask you questions about them. You'll see here that this is a style of question that we have named the Venn to text question. And the reason why we've named that is that it describes the type of information that you're given and the type of information that your answer option will be given to you as. So in this case, the type of information that you've been given is in the form of a Venn diagram itself, and the answer options that you're going to be choosing from will be in the form of text-based statements. They can also reverse that as well. So you can also be given questions where the information given to you is in the form of text, and the answer options themselves will be in the form of Venn diagrams. So again, we have this massive challenge of having to get used to the ways in which they're not only giving you information, but asking you to answer with that information. So it's really worth being aware of all of the different question types that they can give you and being aware of the individual challenges of those question types. But for this third question that we'll be attempting here, we've given you this Venn diagram. And as you'll see, the question that we'll be asking you will be in the form of text. Excellent. So congratulations to those of you who gave that third answer. 2 more people wear white jeans than drink alcohol. These questions for Venn diagrams can be really tricky. And they can be tricky in a variety of ways. This type of question that we were given was a Venn to text question. And the idea of it was being able to use small amounts of mental maths effectively in order to find the correct answer. You will have seen that the statements that we've been given here are in varying degrees of complexity. So some of the statements, like the second one, only mention one of the shapes on that Venn diagram. 2 of the options that we've been given here mention two of the shapes on the Venn diagram. So the first and the third option mention two shapes. And the last option here mentions more than two shapes. It mentions three shapes in total. One of the main things that you want to do in the UCAT is that you want to try and make things as easy for yourself as possible whenever you're working through the questions. And what you want to do as well is to always start off by trying to ascertain, is the easiest answer the truth? So in this case, what you would want to do is you'd want to start off with this second statement of 27 people in total watch TV. If we go back and have a look at the Venn diagram, you'd see that that would make sure that we were looking at the triangle in this instance. So we'd look at the watching TV in the watching TV shape. In order to do mental maths, one of the easiest ways to do so is to add up numbers that themselves add to round and easy to use numbers. So in this case, you would start off by looking at 6 and 4, adding to 10, add on 10, giving you 20, add on 7, giving you 27 already, and then you have 27 add 5 as the additional step. And one of the last things that you can do here is you don't need to know what 27 add 5 is to know that the second statement here is not the answer, simply because you know that the total is going to be bigger than 27, and therefore that's not the answer. And that's one of the most useful things that you can do for questions like these, is to not do any steps that are unnecessary to you finding the answer. So 27 add 5 is a relatively simple mental addition that you can do, giving you 32. But the main aspect of that is that you don't have to do it in order to find the answer. And you can save yourself a couple of seconds here and there by using tips and tricks like that. While it seems like that isn't really going to make much of a change to this particular answer, and you'd be right, it's probably not going to change massively the amount of time that you spend on this question, those small seconds really add up over time to the point that it can allow you to answer a few more questions overall for the section. And that can ultimately have an impact on whether you think the section was successful or not. We'll have a look at the answer for this then. So 2 more people wear white jeans than drink alcohol. So we're looking at the wearing white jeans aspect, which is the arrow here, and we're looking at the rectangle, which is drink alcohol. We're looking for whether 2 more people wore white jeans than drank alcohol. So we're looking at the difference between these two aspects. If we're looking at the differences, then what we want to do is to calculate that difference in the easiest way possible. For wearing white jeans, we've got 4, 3, 6, and 5. And for drinking alcohol, we've got 7, 2, 4, and 3. So those values of 4 and 3 have been shared over both of these shapes. If we want to calculate the difference in the easiest way possible, what we can therefore do is cancel out the 4 and the 3. Seeing as if we're going to work out the difference, we would end up adding them onto one side and taking them away on the other side anyway. So in the interest of time, we can simply ignore them entirely. Instead, that gives us the numbers of 6 add 5, which gives us 11, versus 7 add 2, which gives us 9. 11 minus 9 is 2. There are therefore 2 more people that wear white jeans than drink alcohol, and that's why that third answer was correct. Again, this small tip that you can use of ignoring numbers that are shared between the shapes when we're working out that difference can be really helpful in helping you to save potentially anywhere from 5 to 10 seconds. If you do that 5 to 6 times over the course of the section, that will allow you to complete an entire question. And if that's a question that gives you 5 yes or no conclusions, that could potentially give you 2 more marks on the section and help you to get a score that you're happy with. So those are the types of tips and tricks that you need to be aware of when it comes to decision making. And that's why it's so helpful to be aware of all of the different question types and know what types of questions they're going to ask you, how are they going to present that information, and how can you logically work through them. We'll go through one more question that's a little bit similar, but also slightly more complicated to what we just discussed. So this is again a then to text question, and this is focusing on a variety of different organizations here. So this is the final question that we'll be doing as part of this aspect of the talk. Excellent. So thank you so much for taking part in that. Congratulations to the 21 of you who gave that fourth answer as your answer. You are absolutely correct. This is a much more challenging question than the previous one that we looked at. And there are several reasons as to why that is. First of all, the Venn diagram itself is more complicated. So we've got more numbers in there, and we've also got some confusing information as to what these shapes represent. As well as that, some of you might have noticed that the main difference between this Venn diagram and the previous one is the fact that we haven't been given a key for this Venn diagram. So if we go back to the previous Venn diagram, you'll see that the question writers have given us a key that demonstrates which of these shapes corresponds to which of these categories. For this question here, we've been given the shapes, and instead we've been given the key in a verbal representation. This is a much more difficult way of processing visual information. And this highlights one of the main aspects of decision making, which is the use of the whiteboard that you're provided with for the UCAT. The whiteboard is one of the most useful resources that you can use across the entire UCAT. And it mainly comes into play during the decision making process and the decision making section. So, as we've said, there are multiple different ways in which they will give you information in decision making. And one of the main ways that they will test you is by giving you information in a visual sense, such as what they've done here. And as a result of that, there are many techniques and methods that you can use to effectively represent that information using your whiteboard to make life a little bit easier for you when you're answering these questions. A very typical technique that I teach my students to use for a question like this is if they have been given a complicated Venn diagram and they haven't been given an appropriate key to use alongside that Venn diagram, is to draw out your own key to take up the first 10 seconds or so of that question. And you'll often find that that will be the difference between being able to answer the question effectively and being able to do the question, but in a much larger amount of time. So again, it's the exact same question type that they've given us before and that we saw in the previous question. So it's still a Venn diagram. We're still being asked to give our answer in the form of text. Instead, the way that they presented the information to us is changed slightly. And as a result of that, we need to be able to deal with that in an effective and time-oriented manner. And again, that shows to some of the difficulties of decision making. So absolutely, congratulations to the 21 of you who answered that correctly. To everyone else that participated, that is a very challenging question to do, particularly if you've not had much experience before with decision making, as I can imagine most of you haven't had that much of a look at it as of yet. It's still really, really good that you're able to give an answer to questions in a limited amount of time. Thank you so much for participating in those 4 questions. It's really helpful to get that kind of audience interaction and to get that involvement. And I hope that those questions effectively demonstrated the difficulties that we'd spoken about previously in this presentation. Excellent. So there is our leaderboard. Congratulations to Nick for getting the most correct answers out of that. Commiserations to Adam, who came close up in second there. So in general, in terms of decision making, it's 29 questions over 31 minutes. It gives you just over a minute per question. We typically recommend spending 60 seconds per question just to make sure that you can get the timing of this section appropriately. As we mentioned previously, this section does give you the most amount of time per question, so it's quite forgiving in that regard. Students mainly tend to find the other sections of the UCAT more challenging in terms of the timing aspect, but quite a few students will struggle with decision making in terms of actually sorting through the information itself. And again, that's why it's so useful to know all of the different question types and the way in which they will give you that information. Excellent. There are lots of ways that you can prepare for decision making, and we have lots of ways in which we can support you in terms of preparing for that. So one of the most common and effective ways that we use to prepare students is through the one-to-one tutoring. This can be completely personalized to the student, making sure to address any strengths and weaknesses that you have, any concerns that you've got regarding decision making or the rest of the UCAT, and make sure that we're giving you timing techniques that have been proven to work for each of the UCAT sections. For decision making, there are 18 general tutorials that we work through, both in the one-to-one tutoring sessions as well as in some of the other services that we provide. As you can see on there, I've been repeatedly talking about the variety of questions that you can get in terms of decision making, and all of these tutorials go through different styles of questions that you could get. So there's various types of syllogisms, of Venn diagram questions, going on to topics that you might be a bit more familiar with, like probability. And then making your way more towards those questions that are more verbal, so various logic puzzles that you can get. All in all, it can be really challenging to move directly from one question type to another when you're doing the section. So having lots of experience with all of the question types, and especially with the techniques that you can use to save yourself time on these questions, can be really important. And in doing so, we can create a personalized plan for you to work through the UCAT and to progress as much as possible up to your exam. We've also got an online course, which is a really effective way of preparing independently for the UCAT as well. I'm aware that we had a little bit of a technical hiccup in yesterday's session in terms of hearing the online course, so hopefully that should be sorted now. I'm going to play a very short video just to demonstrate what the online course does and how it can help you. And then at the end of today's talk, in a few minutes' time, we are going to be doing a Q&A to finish off the session. So if you do have any general questions at all, please stick around so that we can help you out in the Q&A.
Hi there. Are you setting the UCAT but currently unable to improve your score? Well, click below to check out Medic Mind's online UCAT course. This course has over 100 video tutorials covering 20 plus hours worth of content, everything you need to know about the UCAT. We have over 2,000 practice questions, live weekly interactive webinars, and so much more. So grab this offer just now and click the link below in order to get instant access to this course. We can help you learn to scan read in verbal reasoning and pick out those key words in order to master those questions. In decision making, we'll teach you a simple method in order to tackle even the trickiest of logic puzzles and smash those Venn diagrams. In quantitative reasoning, we'll help you master that UCAT calculator and work out how to answer questions in 2 steps or less. In abstract reasoning, we can teach you a simple method for determining a pattern in only 30 seconds. And in situational judgment, we can tell you everything that you need to know from the GMC guidelines and help you to achieve that band 1 that you need. An award-winning UCAT course is trusted by over 12,500 students in 37 different countries. We have over 350 reviews on Trustpilot, and all the materials were written by our founder, who scored 900 on his UCAT. So don't miss out and check out this amazing offer. Let us help you get the best score possible in UCAT, and check out the link below.
Excellent. So that speaks to how useful the online course can be. There's over 8,000 questions on there, which is so useful when it comes to being able to put into practice all of the different techniques that we can help you with, as well as going over all the different types of questions that you can get in decision making. And as we said, we've got tons of reviews to demonstrate exactly how we've helped students previously in the past. We help thousands of students every year across a number of subjects. So do feel free to check us out on websites like Trustpilot to see how we've helped people previously. We do help with every other aspect of the application as well. So for those of you who have been struggling to get any work experience at all, I've been in that position myself. I know how challenging it can be to hear back from, local clinical environments that might not be able to take you on. We do have a work experience program, both for medical applicants and for dentistry applicants as well, that can be really useful in teaching you all of this knowledge in a really practical setting that you can therefore use for your personal statement and for your interviews as well. If you'd like to find out anything more about those details, you can find everything on our website, medicmind.co.uk. We've got resources and information on there relating to our one-to-one tutoring, the online resources that we've got, as well as the work experience programs that we have. We also have WhatsApp groups where we're going to be giving out free resources and tips, including tips on the different types of questions in decision making and how to go about answering them. We have one WhatsApp group for medicine, and we've also got another WhatsApp group for dentistry as well. We're also running this series of introductory sessions, hopefully to give you a really solid grasp of what the UCAT is like and what some of the challenges of the UCAT are. So in addition to today's session, we're also going to be running future sessions on the other sections of the UCAT. And we also cover other topics as well. So for example, those of you who are interested in applying to Oxbridge, we're also running a series of sessions very similar to this one about how you can apply to Oxbridge and how to do so with a strong application. So we've got this WhatsApp group for medicine, and we've also got a WhatsApp group which is exactly the same but for dentistry instead. Excellent. We do provide free resources as well. It's really important to us to be able to support as many students as possible. So we've got over 500 free practice questions that you can find on our website. This is going to be especially useful to those of you who do find decision making a bit difficult in terms of the variety of questions that you can get. So definitely head on over to the website. You can find all of the free questions on there. They can be a really great way of beginning to practice. We've got a UCAT blog as well, where we'll be putting up lots of really helpful tips and tricks and various techniques across the different sections of the UCAT. And that can be really helpful in terms of learning about a new way to approach a difficult style of question. And as you saw, we've also got a YouTube channel as well, where we'll be uploading videos talking about different question types and how to go about answering them. So on to the Q&A portion of today. If anyone does have questions, if they're relating to decision making or to any of the other sections of the UCAT, or indeed for the medical application in general, please feel free to ask. This first question is classic. So you're not doomed in the slightest. I think one of the most challenging aspects of the questions that we gave you just now is the fact that we were introducing them directly under timed conditions. When I'm going through questions with my students, the first thing I tell them is that you need to be comfortable in the theory before you can then move on to doing questions in a timely manner. So typically with my students, when we're first looking at a new question type, they tend to take anywhere between a minute to 5 minutes per question as they're getting used to the way that they're being asked those questions. And from there, once you're really comfortable with the theory, that's when you can start taking that time per question down and answering questions in that 60 seconds per question that you've got in decision making. So you're not doomed in the slightest. It's something that you can get used to. The first thing that you need to be comfortable with And the first thing to improve is your knowledge of the different question types and the techniques that you can use to answer those. And we've got lots of resources on our website in terms of how you can go about doing that. The best way to improve your score this year after getting an average score in the UCAT last year is being aware of the areas that you found difficult and the areas where you might have gone wrong on the day. So the average for decision making, for example, last year was around about 616 on the UCAT. And if that was your score that you did achieve, first of all, getting the average is no mean feat at all. So well done on getting a good score on your UCAT the first time round. But you have to think, were there certain question types that you found difficult and that you think you got wrong on the day? Was there anything you could have done differently relating to the timing strategies that you used for the sections? Did you time out on any of the sections? Being really honest with yourself about your performance and being appropriately critical of areas that you could improve on is one of the best ways to be able to improve upon your UCAT score. So knowing the areas that you found difficult gives you areas that you can then work on and improve. And often that's one of the best ways that we find students increase their grades and increase their scores year upon year when it comes to the UCAT. So have a reflection on how you did and how you found it previously, and use that to tailor your progress and your preparation for this year. Is this seen as the hardest section in terms of content? I think this is a really interesting question. Some people would say yes, and some people would say no. So I am giving a little bit of a cop-out answer. The main reason for that is that the UCAT tests you in so many different ways of thinking that naturally some people are going to be more inclined to this section as opposed to others. Particularly for those people who enjoy things like riddles and logic puzzles, they tend to find this question and this section a little bit easier than some of the other sections, but it's very subjective and very variable. I definitely think that this is the hardest section in terms of going question to question, because like we discussed, for every question that you get in decision making, the scenario that you're given, you'll only be given one question or set of questions on that. Whereas in verbal reasoning, at least, if you have a difficult question on a passage, you will then be asked an additional 3 questions on that same passage. So you do have a little bit of carryover from one question to another, whereas you don't get that on decision making. This person says that they always waste time overthinking their answers because they skim read, and how do you stop that? I would say that it's not a case of stopping it, but it's actually a case of refining that technique. So skim reading is an excellent technique that you can use to make sure that you're only taking in the most valuable information for that question. And that's exactly what you should be doing, especially when you've been given information which is very word heavy. So for example, in verbal reasoning, you should be utilizing skim reading to its full potential. The difficulty there is when you skim read, but you don't effectively take in the information, and then you have to skim read through the information another few times just to take in the most important information. That's when skim reading isn't so useful. So what I would say to you in this instance is the skim reading that you're doing in picking out the information, is it effective in picking out the most important information for that question? If it's not, then it means that you need to refine your skim reading technique. If it is, then brilliant. You've got a really good technique for picking out the information. And in that case, overthinking your answers is something that everyone does, but it's really important to think about the dangers of overthinking. So if you pick an answer that you're not very sure of, but you've managed to get that answer in a good amount of time, that could bode much better for the rest of your section, rather than picking an answer, overthinking, spending another minute or so checking your answer, because that minute that you've used rechecking your answer could be used to answer a brand new question. So it's all about thinking, if I overthink this answer and check my answer again, what impact is that going to have on my ability to do the rest of this section under time pressures? So you need to think about the way in which you're answering the current question and how that's going to impact all of the remaining questions on your section. If it's the final question for your section, however, feel free to double check and even triple check your answer. If you're applying for graduate medicine, the course is absolutely still appropriate. There are lots of kind of methods that you can go into medicine from graduate medicine. So quite a few graduates will sit the UCAT. They'll also sit the GAMSAT as well to maximize their options. We do have courses and we do have tutoring options for both of those tests, as well as the BMAT as well. So if you want to maximize your options for applying to medicine, then sitting multiple tests can be really helpful, and we can support you with all of those. In terms of your schedule, we can also make sure to fit those sessions around your schedule as well. We recognize the fact if you're a master's student with a job, you really don't have that much free time. So what we can do is make sure that we are working those sessions effectively around your schedule and work to your needs. So what did I get in the UCAT and what university do I go to? I'm a current fifth year medical student at the University of East Anglia. I've just spent the previous year working on a BSc in urgent and emergency care. So next year will be the year that I hopefully graduate from medical school. For my UCAT, I got an average of 730 across all of my sections, with my peak score being 890 in quantitative reasoning. And the main way that I managed to do that was through something that I spoke about with some of the previous questions, which was making sure that I was hyper aware of my strengths and weaknesses in the UCAT, and working as much as possible on my weaknesses in an effective and focused way. I think that being honest with yourself about the things you find challenging is really important when it comes to the UCAT, because that tells you the areas in which you can improve. So thank you so much, everyone, for attending today's presentation. If it would be possible, please do leave us a review if you found this presentation helpful. It's really beneficial to us in being able to know how we can continue to put these sessions on and make them as useful for you as possible. Otherwise, thank you so much for your engagement. If you are interested in any of our resources, please do check us out, medicmind.co.uk. You can also reach us on email and you can give us a call as well.